Hi everyone, it's Monica, and welcome back to Tailor-Made Cards for You. Well, today we're going to be talking about blending tools. And my goodness, there are so many blending tools out there. It is just easy to get confused, get overwhelmed, and not really know what blending tool to buy. Now, I've been collecting blending tools for a while. Some of these go back to the early Ranger blending tools, which kind of started the whole fiasco of blending. And through the years, I've collected several other types of blending tools. So what I thought I would do today is I would just kind of gather them up and demo them and give you some of my opinions on what I use them for. Now, like I said, the Ranger tools are what started this whole blending mania. And then we started seeing other tools come out. Like we saw the Clarity brushes come out. Most recently, we saw the Picket fence blending brushes come out. And I know there were tons of videos on these when they came out. There's also some other types of blending tools. You've got your ColorToolBox Stylus handle brushes, which you see a lot with really the specific distinct blending and coloring. You've got mixed media brushes. And now most recently, Scrapbook.com has come out with their domed blending tools, along with their finger Dauber blending tools. And I want to go ahead and compare them to what's already been on the market, which are similar products. So let's go ahead and clear off this desk and let's start blending and let's see what tools are best for types of blending. And this is really just my opinion, you guys. I wanted to just share with you how I use my tools and what I have found through the years to work best for me. So while other people might have other opinions, this is just kind of my opinion based on my experience in using some of my tools. All right, so let's get started. So the first set that I want to share with you today are these blending tools from Ranger. And as you can see, you have the rectangular blending tool, and then you have the round blending tool. And the rectangular one came out first, and it was basically what was on the market and what most people used. But they found that some of those rectangular tools left really harsh marks when you were trying to blend. So I think that's when they decided to come out with the round blending sponges, which really work a lot better. You're able to control your blending tool a lot more with the round one. As you can see, I can kind of wrap my forefinger and my thumb around it, and I'm really able to control my blending. Another nice thing about the round sponges is they fit nicely underneath your distress inks, the mini inks. So you could easily just add some Velcro to the bottom of your ink and stick your round sponge to the bottom, and that would enable you to have a sponge for every single color. Now, you don't have to have a sponge for every color because these sponges can easily be washed up and cleaned up and used with different colors. But a lot of people like the convenience of having one color per one ink pad. And I think that's why a lot of people decided to go ahead and get several of the sponges and have one for each. So when the round tools came out, of course, I kind of switched to those. But I did keep my rectangular tools because I found that the rectangular tools worked better when I was working with my alcohol inks. And if you've never worked with alcohol inks, these are inks that work really well with your non-porous paper. What you do basically is you just have some felt and you attach it to your tool, and then you can blend some of your solution and then add it to your paper. Now, there are felts that you can purchase from Ranger for these tools, but you can easily buy some white felt and just cut them up yourself. So either way, if you don't want to have to hassle with cutting up your own felt, then you can find the pre-cut felts packaged, ready to go. But that's really what I use my rectangular tools for. I kept them. I didn't necessarily throw them away when I decided to transfer to the round blending tools. I kept the rectangular ones, and now I use those strictly for my alcohol inks. So if I would have to recommend any type of tool here, I would say use your round ones for your blending types of crafting, and then you would use your rectangular ones for more of your alcohol-based type of blending. Now, there's a lot of ways to store your sponges. And like I said, you can easily store your round ones underneath the ink that it goes with. There's little cases you can add them to. But one way that I found to store my round sponges is in the containers that my washi tape come in from Tim Holtz, the Ideology collection. And these little sponges fit perfectly into this container. So keep in mind when you are getting some of your product, look at the containers because you might be able to salvage those containers and use them for some of your storage. And like I said, those round little sponges fit perfectly in there. Now, Scrapbook.com recently came out with their own type of blending tool, and this is called the Domed Inked Blending Tools. So when I purchased the Scrapbook.com blending tools, I did do a comparison against the Ranger ones. And the first obvious difference, of course, is that the sponges are dome shaped. They're the same size for the most part because, as you can see, they easily fit inside of my tube where I store my other round sponges. So the size is pretty much the same. Now, when you're looking at the actual tool, the obvious difference is the Ranger one has a black handle and the Scrapbook.com has a gray handle. The Scrapbook.com blending tool is a little bit longer, and the round base is also a little bit bigger. But for the most part, they're pretty much the same. I think you could probably interchange the sponges. So the big difference, of course, is the sponge. And this is because your sponge is more of a dome shape versus being flat. And one might say that you can get a little bit more ink on the dome because the surface is a little bit bigger and it's a little bit more dense. So I'm able to add my ink easily. I'm able to control the handle like I would on my Ranger tool, and I can get a nice blending result. Now, one difference I did find when I was actually cleaning up the sponges is when I was washing off the Ranger sponges, it still had some of the ink on it, even though it was clean and no ink was coming off of my finger after I washed it. You could still see the dyed color on the actual sponge. But when I washed the Scrapbook.com sponge, it completely went back to the original white color. So it looked like it was almost brand new. So I really like that because sometimes, even though I can reuse my sponges, I get a little hesitant when I see that there is some staining color on a sponge, even though I know it's clean and I can wipe it on paper and nothing comes off. But it's always nice to start out with a white clean sponge when you're going to do your ink blending. So in a side-by-side comparison, do they both do the same thing? Absolutely. You can blend with both of them easily. I think you've got a really nice grip handle. The sponges are enough to add ink, and you can get nice results with both of them. But which one do I prefer? I'd have to say probably I prefer the domed one, just because the sponge is a little bit more fluffy. It has more surface, and I think I'm able to get a little bit more ink on it. And I like the roundness of it. So if I had to choose one side by side and they were at exactly the same price, I probably would go for the domed one versus the flat one. But if I could find a good price on the Ranger ones, then I probably would go that way. All right, so the next tool I wanted to share with you is this mixed media sponge, and it had the round dome as well, so I kind of wanted to do a comparison. The sponge is not as soft as the Scrapbook.com one. It's a little bit more dense. It feels more like a sponge, if you will, but I'm still able to get some coverage. Now, this was in a clearance rack, I think, at Tuesday morning, and I just picked it up, and I mostly use it for my paints because I like the way I can blotch down my paints with it, but you could certainly blend with it as well. It probably wouldn't be my first choice if I was actually doing some blending with my distress inks, but I think it's a good tool to be able to transfer ink to paper if I'm just needing a quick transfer of ink, or if I wanted to transfer some paint as well. Okay, so the next type of blending tools that I wanted to share with you are more of the blending brushes. And there's three types of tools that I have that I wanted to share and kind of compare and contrast. And the three sets I'm going to be sharing are those life-changing blending brushes that came out by Picket Fence. I've got my clarity brushes that have been out for a while. And then I've also got the ColorToolBox Stylus handlers, which also have handles, aren't necessarily brushes per se. They have more of a sponge, but they do have the longer handles, so I kind of put them in this category. So when you're just looking at them and kind of feeling them and holding them, the first obvious difference is when you're looking at the clarity brushes, those are true brushes. They have the brush type end, they have the wood handle, and for the most part, they're lengthwise the same size. Your brushes are just thicker or smaller. And then you have your life-changing brushes, and those have the longer handles. The handle bases are a little bit more curved, and you've got different sizes. So let's go ahead and try them on paper, and we'll see what the differences are. Now, when you're using your clarity brushes, typically when I'm working with my clarity brushes, I'll just swipe it back and forth against my ink. And then when I'm transferring it to paper, I'm just going back and forth as I'm showing you now. And as you can see, you can get a real nice subtle background. It's kind of difficult to get a dark background with these clarity brushes unless you do it several times. And typically I don't do that when I'm using my clarity brushes. I'm going for the soft effect for the background. I'm not looking for a deep color. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and use the same exact color, but now I'm going to change to the life-changing blending brushes from Picket Fence. And this is also a brush. If you could feel it, it's really soft, but you hold it a little bit differently. When you're using the clarity brush, it's more like a pencil or a paintbrush. But now when you're using the life-changing blending brush, you're holding it more like, I don't even know, you're grabbing it on the top. And a lot of times I'll put my index finger over the round part. And as you can see, you still get some nice blending, but it is a little bit darker. And I think it's because of the pressure that you're using when you're actually using the life-changing blending brush. It's not just a soft swish back and forth. You're actually putting a little bit more pressure. But as you can see, they both create really nice backgrounds. And while the clarity brush is a little bit softer, you still get a nice soft background using the life-changing blending brush. Now with the life-changing blending brushes, you can buy them individually. You can buy them at just the bigger set. You can buy the smaller set, or you can buy the complete set. Now when they first came out, I of course bought the complete set because I like the range of sizes. And I like that you can really control how you're using the brush just by the way that you're holding it in your hand. Now the brushes come smaller, of course, but the head of the brush, this particular one, is a little bit more round, where some of the other ones are a little bit thinner and longer. And this is what I liked about the smaller brushes. If you wanted to color up a stencil, you can control what part of the stencil that you're coloring by using these smaller brushes. There's no way that I could have done this with the clarity brushes, and I don't see how I would have done this with some of those other blending tools. But with the life-changing brushes, I can really control where I put my color. And that's one of the things that I really liked about this set. Now, I don't know if you would necessarily need to purchase the entire set. Like I said, I bought the whole set, and it has all of the sizes. But I think you could easily get away with having 2 bigger brushes and 2 smaller brushes, and that would be sufficient. But of course, if you're like me, you want to get the whole set. A lot of times you can find it on sale, so just kind of keep your eye open on that. You can find them not only at Picket Fence, but you can find them online now as well. And I believe some of the people have said that the makeup brushes that are kind of the same as these, I guess, work exactly the same. I don't know. I haven't done a comparison. I only bought the Picket Fence ones, and I know that I'm really happy with them. So I also still wanted to show you that you can certainly use your clarity brushes with your stencils, especially if you just want to brush over your actual stencil and not be real specific as to have a certain color in a certain part of your stencil. The clarity brushes work great. They give a really nice background, and I've often used my clarity brushes with my stencils, and I've gotten nice results. Now, like I said, with your life-changing blending brushes, you can actually color with those, specifically the smaller ones. If you have a stamped image and you want to do some coloring with some of your blending tools, you can certainly do that with some of the smaller colors. It's easy to be able to control the blending tool by the way that you hold it. And it's almost like a crayon, if you will, because of the way that you can control it. So you can easily just take your blending brush, put it into your ink, and then you control exactly where you're going to put your ink onto your stamped image. So as you can see, I can easily just add some of that ink to the smaller brush, and then I can control exactly where my ink goes inside of the flowered petals. And while it's not necessarily perfect, I think you could definitely do some blending with it, and it would turn out just great. And as I mentioned, those smaller brushes come with different types of shapes on the brush. You've got the one brush that is more of a round brush, and then this one here that I'm showing you is more of a long, thinner brush, so it gives you different options for your coloring. I really like the shape of these brushes as well. As you can see, they're a little bit curved at the edge, and then it has a thicker part of the handle towards the end, so it fits really nicely in your hand, and it is flexible, so you can easily add as much ink as you need. It holds really nicely in your hand, and you're able to really get some nice control. So I have to say I'm really happy with these brushes. The price point was a little bit more than I wanted to spend when I first got them, but I wanted to try them out. But if you wanted to get them in sets, like I said, you don't have to buy the whole set all at the same time. You can get maybe the larger ones and then the smaller ones at a later date. But I really think it's a good investment. All right, so the next tool I wanted to share with you are these little finger daubers. And I love these finger daubers. I have 4 of the black ones here, and they wash up really nicely. The sponge is pretty much the same type of material as you would get on your Ranger sponges, but they just basically go right on your fingers. And scrapbook.com has recently come out with their own little finger daubers, and they have them in the stackables. And I purchased the stackables just because I liked that they were all together. I like the way that you can stack them, put them in the little container, and they can sit right on my desk. And as you can see, I can easily stick them on my finger, and I can label them as well. Now, the biggest difference that I found when I first started playing with these is the black ones, the finger is a little bit smaller, whereas the scrapbook.com ones, the insert is a little bit bigger. And that, I think, of course, is so you can actually stack them. But that really didn't make a difference when I actually went to use them. They worked exactly the same way, and I was happy with the results that I got with the scrapbook.com ones. So let's go ahead and do a comparison here. Now, the best thing about these finger daubers is the control that you get. It is right on your fingertip, and you're using your finger as your paintbrush. So you can easily control exactly where your ink goes and how much ink you're going to be putting down. You can color with them, as I'm showing you here. And these probably are some of my favorite tools to work with, just because they're easy to work with, and I have a lot of control. A lot of times when I'm creating my vintage style cards, I like to edge the outside of my cardstock, and I always go to these because I can just easily just grab a dauber, get some sponge onto it, and go to town. And this essentially is what I used to do. I used to grab my bigger dauber or my bigger blending brush to do the exact same thing, but I didn't need that big surface. I just needed a little surface, so the finger dauber worked perfectly to edge my cards. So when scrapbook.com came out with their set, I really wanted to stock up on them because I wanted some more, and I got these over Black Friday, so I got a really good price point. So I went ahead and I grabbed the ones that are stackable because, like I said, I like to have some of my tools close to me without it taking a lot of room on my desk. So as you can see, the blending works really great. The way that I use these is I just typically will stick them on my index finger, and then I'm holding it with my thumb and against my middle finger to kind of hold the control. And I can easily edge the outside of my cards. I can color with them. I can do most anything that I needed to do that I did with my other black daubers that I had before. Now, if I had to blend a bigger surface, I probably wouldn't go to these finger daubers. This wouldn't be my first choice. But if I just had a small area to blend, I might use them. But ordinarily, if I'm going to do some real blending, I would go to my bigger blending tools, and my finger daubers wouldn't be my first choice. And you can even get a little creative with your finger daubers if you wanted to. Like I said, your finger pretty much is your controlling paintbrush, so you could easily do lines. You can do zigzags. There's a lot of things that you can do using your finger daubers. For the most part, I typically will use my daubers to do small coloring areas, or I'll edge the sides of my card. But really, there's a lot more you can do. I think also I created some cards where I actually just created some spots, so you could easily just get your daubers and just punch them straight down, and you would get some nice circles, and you can create like a polka dot background if you wanted to. But like I'm showing you here, you could just create stripes, you can create zigzags. There's so many things that you can do because you have control of the finger dauber. And if you do end up with several of these finger daubers, you could easily label them. I use my label maker to label mine, but I know that Ranger has sheets where you can print out and tape the color and the label for the color of ink that you're using onto your dauber. And not only can you do that for your tools, but you can also do that for your inks as well. So I'll make sure that I leave links to that at the end of the video for you as well. Okay, so what is my recommendation? I like both of them. I have to say that when I first put the scrapbook.com daubers on my finger, it felt too loose because the base was a little bit bigger, but I got used to it. But the price point is so much better for the scrapbook.com ones. I was able to get several of these Daubers for a really good price point. And while I like both of them, I like the fact that I can contain my scrapbook.com ones. I have a nice little container. They're stackable. I could easily stack color combinations together if I'm working with certain inks regularly. And I like that convenience. So if I were to say, if you were going to buy any of these Daubers, I would go with the scrapbook.com ones. And I would recommend the stackable ones because there's a lot of convenience in having several little Daubers in one compartment. All right, so the final blending tool that I wanted to share with you are these ColorBox Stylus handlers. And to be honest with you, I don't use these very often. I picked these up when I was at a stamping show, and I love the way they were demoing them, so I picked them up. And it's like anything, the person that's actually using them are really talented. They're able to use them really nicely, and I was really happy with the results. Now, the way that you interchange your sponges is it pops right off, and you can buy the little sponges and you can interchange. The convenience thing about this is the way that you hold it. You hold it kind of like a pencil or a pen, kind of like you're writing, and there's a lot of control on this. So if you're doing some detailed coloring, these are really great for that. I would not do any blending type of techniques with these types of brushes. And when I say the blending techniques, I mean the big coverage. You can certainly blend some of the smaller areas. And as you can see here, I can color with them really nicely. But these aren't the type of blending tools that you're going to typically use for coverage on a big piece of cardstock. You can do it, but it probably isn't the best way to do that. You know, if you want to have some rough edges, maybe if you want to create some sand or some rough edges like I'm doing here, it works really nicely. So what I would say is if you do invest in these type of blending tools, you're going to have to play with them a little bit, see what you can do with them. I do think that they give you some good results. I think you have a lot of options here, and you can definitely get some different types of results than some of those other blending tools that I shared with you, but not necessarily the same types of results. And sometimes that's good, right? I mean, maybe you want to just pick up a couple of these Stylus types of blending tools so you can have some different results. And I like variety. I like to be able to have different types of tools that do different types of things. And this is a good investment to maybe buy a couple, but I probably wouldn't buy a whole set. So that's pretty much it, you guys. I've gone through all of my blending tools that I have in my stash, and I've shared with you some of my opinions and giving you some examples of some of the ways to use them. And as always, I'll have links at the bottom of the video for these products that I've demoed for you today. Now, if you've enjoyed my video, I would sure appreciate a thumbs up. And if you haven't subscribed to my channel yet, don't forget to hit that subscribe button. These are some of the types of videos that I'm going to be doing this year in 2020. I'm going to be demoing some of these different types of products and giving you some of my opinions on the way that I use them. So I hope that this video was helpful and that you've enjoyed the different types of tools that I shared with you today. And let me know in the comments below if you found this video helpful and if you've enjoyed it. If you have any other recommendations for types of videos like this, feel free to leave those in the comments as well. All right, everybody. Thanks so much for stopping by, and we'll see you again next time.